You're not afraid of too many things. You're afraid of the wrong thing. You think you're afraid of failure, afraid of losing money, afraid of being judged, afraid of being left behind. But the truth is, you've never truly feared what you should fear. And that's why your life is still being controlled by small things. You procrastinate, you stay silent, you compromise, not because you are weak, but because your fears are in the wrong order. And when that order is wrong, every decision you make becomes distorted. You call it being careful. You call it being realistic. But deep inside, it's the fear of people, and it's controlling you. Listen carefully to this. Fear itself is not the problem. The problem is, you're fearing the wrong thing. There is a kind of fear that doesn't make you weaker, but makes you unshakable. A kind of fear that doesn't make you shrink, but makes you stand firm. A kind of fear that when it appears, all other fears fade away. And the Bible calls it the fear of God. Not panic, not intimidation, but a deep reverence, so profound that everything else in your life falls back into its rightful place. Because when you truly realize who He is, everything that once made you afraid begins to shrink. Not because your problems disappear, but because your God becomes greater. Imagine a moment you walk into a room, and in it, there is a presence so overwhelming it cannot be ignored. Every noise before fades away. Every pressure loses its power. Every worry becomes small. That is exactly what happened when Isaiah saw the Lord. He didn't become brave because he tried or because he reassured himself. He became fearless the moment he saw God high and lifted up. That moment reordered his entire world. The king who once made a nation tremble suddenly became small. The threats that once troubled him became insignificant. Because you cannot stand in the true presence of God and still believe that anything else matters more. That's what you're missing. Not more motivation, not more discipline, not more trying harder. You need a greater revelation, because you cannot defeat fear by trying to be stronger. You can only overcome it when something greater appears. And here's the real question for you right now. In the decisions you've been delaying, in the conversations you've been avoiding, in the actions you know you should take, but haven't dared to. Who holds the greatest power, God or the fear of people? You may not realize it, but every time you stay silent, every time you step back, every time you compromise, you are choosing who you fear the most. And the Bible is very clear. The fear of man was a trap that doesn't bind you with chains, but with thoughts. You think you're being wise. You think you're waiting for the right moment. But in reality, you are being held back. And if you don't change this, you will continue to live a smaller life than the one you were created for. But this can change, starting today, not by trying to be more courageous, but by seeing God more clearly. Because when He becomes the greatest reality in your life, fear doesn't disappear. It simply returns to its proper place. And when fear is in the right place, you will have something you've never had before, the courage to act. And that is only the beginning. And that is only the beginning. Because when you begin to see things this way, another truth will start to emerge. The problem was never that you lacked courage. You have been courageous before, many times. You've made it through hard seasons, endured pressure, risen after failures. But there are moments, very specific ones, very personal. You clearly know what you should do, but you still don't do it, not because you don't know, but because you're afraid. Afraid to speak the truth, afraid to do what is right, afraid to stand for yourself, and you begin to rationalize it. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I'll wait for a better moment. Those statements sound wise, but if you're honest, you'll realize they're just a way to delay fear. There was someone who lived in this loop for a very long time. They weren't weak. On the contrary, they were capable, responsible, trusted by others. But deep inside, they always felt something wasn't right. At work, they knew there were things that were unfair, but they stayed silent. In relationships, they knew they weren't being treated right, but they kept enduring it. In major decisions, they knew they should take a different path, but they chose the safe one. And over time, something began to happen. They stopped trusting themselves, not because they failed, but because too many times they didn't stand for themselves. Have you ever felt that? That feeling that you're living below your true potential, not because you can't, but because you don't dare to. That's not a lack of ability. It's something deeper, a question of who you fear the most, because every decision you delay, every time you stay silent, every time you compromise, is a choice. You are choosing between two fears, the fear of God or the fear of people. And most of the time, we choose the fear of people, not because we want to, but because it feels closer, more concrete, more visible. You can see people's eyes, hear their words, feel their reactions, but God, you cannot. And that is exactly why the fear of people often wins, not because it is stronger, but because it is clearer. But think carefully. Just because something feels clearer doesn't mean it is more important. And just because it feels powerful doesn't mean it has real authority. That person began to realize this in a very ordinary situation, a meeting, a clear issue that everyone could see. But no one spoke, and they knew if they spoke up, things could change. But at the same time, they also knew they might be opposed, judged, isolated, and in a few seconds, a battle happened inside them. One voice said, "Speak, this is right." Another said, "Stay quiet, don't cause trouble." And in that moment, they realized this was no longer about communication. This was about faith. What did they truly believe? Did they believe that people's opinions mattered more? Or did they believe that what is right before God mattered more? And for the first time, they didn't answer with words, but with action. They spoke up, not perfectly, not smoothly, but honestly. And do you know what happened? Not everything became better immediately. There was discomfort. There was heavy silence. There were looks. But there was one thing they had never experienced before: peace. Not because the situation was easy, but because, for the first time, they stood on the side of truth. And in that moment, something changed. Not on the outside, but on the inside. They began to trust themselves again, not because they became more capable, but because they stopped betraying themselves. You see, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fearing the right thing. And when you fear the right thing, you will act rightly, even when your heart is still racing. Even when you are still anxious, you still do it, because you know there is something greater than your fear, and that is the starting point of a different life, not more perfect, but more real. And when you begin to live truthfully, you will start to see that many things in your life were built on fear, your choices, your relationships, your limits, and that may make you feel uncomfortable. But that is a sign that you are waking up, and this journey will take you deeper into what you truly believe, into what you truly fear, and ultimately, into who you really are. And what you are about to realize next may make you never see fear the same way again. When you fear the wrong thing, your life begins to slip. Do you realize this? There are days when you're not truly living. You're just avoiding mistake, avoiding judgment, avoiding rejection, avoiding law. You think that's safety, but in reality, it's a form of mental paralysis, a way of living where everything looks fine on the outside, but inside, it's slowly decaying. Imagine a person. Every morning they wake up, the first thing they think is not, "What meaningful thing will I do today?" but instead, "How can I avoid making mistakes today?" Do you see the difference? One is living to move forward, the other is living to avoid falling. And the scary part is, your brain will get used to it. It will turn you into someone who is always defensive, always tense, always on guard, even when there is no real danger. You start turning down opportunities. Just because, what if I fail? You don't dare to speak your true thoughts. Because what if they don't like it? You don't dare to step out of your comfort zone. Because what if things get worse? Do you see it? Your life is gradually shrinking, not because you are weak, but because you are fearing the wrong thing. Here's a very real story. There was a man who once had the chance to start his own business. He had the skills, the connections, even the right timing, but he didn't do it. Not because he lacked ability, but because he was afraid. Afraid of losing money, afraid of failure, afraid of being laughed at. So he chose safety. He stayed in his old job. Stable, predictable, no risk. 5 years passed. He was still there. The job didn't change. His income didn't change. His life didn't change. But the most important thing is, that feeling of what if began to appear. At first, it was just a passing thought. Then it stayed longer, until it became part of his daily thinking. What if I had tried? What if I had dared? What if I hadn't been afraid? Do you see? Fear didn't protect him. It took away his future. This is something many people don't realize. Fear is not always the enemy. But if you fear the wrong thing, it becomes the most dangerous thing. There are two kinds of fear. One helps you survive. The other makes sure you never truly live. Fear of real danger is necessary. It helps you avoid accidents, risks, foolish decisions. But fear of being judged, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being perfect, those things, they won't kill you, but they will kill your potential. Have you ever wondered why some people dare to do big things, even though they feel fear just like you? The answer is not that they are fearless. It's that they fear the right thing. What do they fear? They fear living a life they know they could have done better. They fear growing old with regret. They fear missing opportunities. They fear becoming a weaker version of themselves. Do you see the difference? Their fear pushes them forward, while your fear holds you back. That's why the same emotion can lead to two completely different lives. There is a very important moment that few people notice. It is the moment you have to choose what you will be afraid of, not how to eliminate fear, but which fear you will allow to control you. You can fear failure and do nothing, or you can fear never trying. You can fear being judged, or you can fear living a life that isn't truly yours. You can fear loss, or you can fear never gaining anything at all. Every choice has its price. But most people choose the comfortable cost in the present and don't realize the painful cost in the long run. You choose safety, you avoid risk, you don't get hurt immediately, but you also don't grow, don't move forward, don't become a better version of yourself. And over time, that cost accumulates. It's not loud, not obvious, but it is very real. You begin to feel that something is missing, but you don't know what it is. You watch others move ahead, and you wonder, why can't I do that? But deep down, you know the answer. You chose to fear the wrong thing. One more thing, very important. Fearing the wrong thing will make you misunderstand yourself. You begin to believe, I'm not good enough. I'm not the right fit. I'm not capable. But the truth is, you haven't tried long enough, haven't gone far enough, haven't pushed through enough difficulty. You didn't fail, you just stopped too soon. And fear is the reason you stopped. Does this feel familiar to you? At first you're excited, determined, but when difficulties appear, when it's not as easy as you imagined, when uncertainty begins to creep in, you slow down, you doubt, you overthink, and then you stop. Not because you can't, but because you're afraid. That's how fear quietly controls you. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to force you. It only needs to make you doubt, and you will stop yourself. But there is a truth that you need to remember. Life does not reward those who are not afraid. It rewards those who act despite fear. Fear is normal. Avoidance is the problem. You don't need to become perfectly brave. You just need to stop letting fear decide for you. Maybe you still shake, still worry, still feel uncertain. But you keep moving, and every time you do that, something changes. Not the outside world, but inside you. You begin to trust yourself more, not because you're no longer afraid, but because you know you can move through fear. That is real strength. And when you reach that point, something strange will happen. The things that once scared you begin to shrink, and you begin to grow. But this journey doesn't start by eliminating fear. It starts with a question. What are you afraid of? And does it truly deserve to control your life? Something most people don't even realize. It's not loud, not obvious, but it quietly keeps you stuck in an average life for a very long time. The most dangerous fear is not failure, but false stability. Do you notice this? There is a kind of fear that doesn't make you panic, doesn't keep you awake at night, doesn't make itself obvious, but it quietly controls your life for years. It is the fear of losing stability. It sounds reasonable. Everyone wants stability, a steady job, a life without disruption, a sense of safety. But the problem is, not everything that looks stable is truly stable. There's something called false stability. It's when everything looks normal, but inside there is no growth, no progress, and no change. And the dangerous part is, you get used to it. A very real story. There was an office worker. His job wasn't bad. The salary was enough to live on. The environment wasn't too stressful. Each day looked the same. Go to work in the morning, come home in the evening, scroll on the phone at night, rest on weekends. It sounds normal, even something many people dream of. But there was one thing. He always felt something was missing, not clear, not specific, but always there. Sometimes he thought about changing, learning new skills, doing something new. But then a thought appeared. Forget it. Things are fine as they are. Do you see? That sentence sounds harmless, but it's a trap. Things are fine does not mean things are right. It only means you haven't faced a big problem yet. And that is exactly what keeps you from taking action. Year 1, everything is still fine. Year 2, nothing changes. Year 3, he starts to feel bored. Year 5, he realizes he no longer has choices. His skills haven't grown, opportunities are limited, his motivation has faded. And at that point, even if he wants to change, it becomes much harder. Do you see the danger now? False stability doesn't kill you immediately. It slowly takes away your ability to change. It makes you get used to being average, and over time you begin to think, maybe this is all I am. This is the scariest part. It's not that you don't have potential, it's that you forget you ever had it. You stop trying, stop daring, stop believing, and all of that just because you're afraid of losing your current stability. But look deeper. What are you actually holding on to? A job that can replace you at any time. An income that doesn't grow. A life that isn't moving forward. Is that real stability? Or just a temporary sense of safety? There is a truth that is hard to accept. If you don't choose to change, life will change you. But in ways you don't want. You can keep everything the same today. But the world around you is still moving forward. Technology changes, opportunities change, standards change, and if you stand still, you are actually falling behind. But because it happens slowly, you don't notice until one day and you look back and realize you've been left behind. That is the cost of false stability. It doesn't hurt immediately, but it hurts for a long time. One more thing. False stability often comes with a very familiar feeling. That is procrastination. You always think, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll wait until I feel more ready. It's not the right time yet. But the truth is, you will never feel completely ready. If you wait until there is no fear, no doubt, no risk, you will wait forever, and false stability will keep you there, day after day, year after year, until you no longer have the energy to change. There's a question, very important. Are you stable, or are you stuck? These two things look very similar, but the feeling inside is completely different. Real stability brings growth, peace, and a sense of moving in the right direction. False stability brings stagnation, repetition, and an unexplainable emptiness. You just need to be honest with yourself. Each day you live, are you moving forward or just repeating? Are you building or just maintaining? Are you becoming better or just staying the same? The answer will tell you where you are. But more importantly, do you dare to change? Because change always comes with risk. And that's where fear appears. But remember, you don't have to change your entire life. Just start with one small step. Learn a new skill, try a different direction, do something you've been putting off. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start. Because small actions will break false stability. And once you start moving, your life will begin to change. We're about to go deeper into something even more dangerous. Not fear, not false stability, but the way you talk to yourself. The thing that can build you or destroy you every single day. The voice in your head. Is it helping you or destroying you? Do you realize you don't just live in the outside world, you also live in another world, a world no one can see, that is, the world inside your mind, where there is a voice always there, every day, every moment. It speaks when you wake up, it speaks when you're about to do something, it speaks when you fail, and even when you succeed. Do you hear it? Sometimes it's very quiet, just a passing thought, but sometimes it's very clear, very strong, and very influential. The problem is, that voice is not always on your side. A very real story. There was a girl, very capable. She studied well, worked hard, and had many opportunities to grow. Once, she was offered a higher position. Everyone around her thought she completely deserved it. But when she heard the news, a voice in her head began to appear. I'm not good enough. What if I don't do well? People will think I don't deserve it. Do you see what's happening? No one said those things to her. She was saying them to herself. And the scary part is, she believed it. She turned down the opportunity. Not because she wasn't capable, but because the voice in her head convinced her she wasn't enough. Does this feel familiar? You've been there too. There are moments you want to do something, but immediately a thought appears. Maybe this isn't for me. I'll probably fail. Others are way better than me. And then you stop. No one is stopping you. No one is forcing you. It's just you stopped yourself. This is one of the most dangerous things, because it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within you. And when you believe it, you won't question it. You'll think it's the truth, but in reality, it's just a story you're telling yourself. A story built from fear, from past experiences, from the times you failed. But the problem is, you're using the past to decide your future. You failed once, and you think you'll always fail. You were rejected once, and you think you're not worthy. You didn't succeed before, and you think you're not capable. But that's not the truth. That's just your interpretation, and the voice in your head keeps repeating those interpretations every day until You believe they're true. There's something you need to understand. You are not that voice. You are the one who hears it. And when you realize this, a door will open. You begin to see. You can choose whether to believe it or not. You don't need to stop the thoughts. You just need not to let them control you. Imagine this. If there was someone who always told you, you're not good enough, you're going to fail, you can't do it, would you want to listen to that person every day? No. But the irony is, you accept listening to yourself saying those things every day without resistance. This is why so many people never reach their true potential. Not because they lack ability, but because they're stuck in their own thoughts. There's a simple way to start changing this, not by forcing positive thinking, but by recognizing that voice. Next time, when you're about to do something and a negative thought appears, don't believe it immediately. Pause for a moment and ask, is this really true? Or is it just fear speaking? This question is very simple, but it's powerful because it creates a distance between you and your thoughts. And in that space, you have a choice. You can choose to keep believing or to keep acting. At first, it won't be easy. That voice has been with you for too long. It feels familiar, and you're used to listening to it. But every time you don't follow it, you weaken it. And every time you take action, even while you're still afraid, you're making yourself stronger. Slowly, something will change. That voice will become quieter, and you will become clearer. You will no longer be pulled down by it. You will begin to trust your actions instead of doubting yourself. And when that happens, you will realize the biggest barrier is not the outside world, but the way you talk to yourself. Something more subtle, harder to notice, but controlling so many of your decisions. That is, the beliefs you've never questioned, the things shaping your life. Without you even knowing, hidden beliefs are driving your life without you realizing it. Do you notice? It's not your actions that shape your life, but what you believe. It sounds simple, but if you look closely, everything you do starts from a belief. You try because you believe you can. You stop because you believe you're not enough. You keep going because you believe it's worth it. You give up because you believe there's no result. But the problem is, most of those beliefs you're not even aware of. They don't come from today. They come from a long time ago. From how you were taught, from what you heard, from your early experiences. And over time, you no longer see them as beliefs. You see them as the truth, a very real story. There was someone who always thought, I'm not the type of person who succeeds. No one ever said that directly to him. But growing up, he often heard things like, our family is just average. Don't dream too big. Being stable is enough. At first, they were just words, but slowly, they became beliefs. And as he grew up, those beliefs began to control his actions. He didn't dare to set big goals, didn't dare to try new things, didn't dare to step outside his limits, not because he couldn't, but because deep inside, he believed he didn't belong to those things. Do you see what's happening? No one stopped him, but his beliefs did. And the scary part is, he didn't even realize it. He thought it was his personality, his circumstances, reality, but in truth, it was just a belief, and beliefs can change, but only when you recognize them. There's a very common type of belief. It sounds reasonable, but it's extremely limiting. That is, I have to be sure before I act. Have you ever thought that? I need to prepare more. I need to learn more. I need to wait for a better time. It sounds logical, but in reality, you're delaying. Because you believe you need to be perfect before you start, but the truth is, no one is ever fully ready. The people you see succeeding, they were once confused, lacking confidence, uncertain, but they still started. And you wait, and that belief keeps you in the same place. Another belief, also very dangerous. I'm not allowed to fail. You're afraid of being wrong, afraid of being judged, afraid of being seen as not good enough. So you don't act, but you don't realize not taking action is also a form of failure. It's just that it's not obvious right away, but it accumulates over time, and the cost is much greater. There is something you need to understand. Beliefs are not always true, but if you never question them, you will live your whole life based on things that could be completely wrong. Think about it. If you believe, I'm not good at communication, you will avoid conversations. You will interact less. You won't improve. And as a result, you actually become bad at communication. Not because you can, but because that initial belief led you to that outcome. This is called a loop. Belief creates action. Action creates results. Results reinforce belief. And just like that, you get stuck. But the good news is, you can break it. Not by trying to change everything at once, but by asking questions. Every time a thought appears, I can't do this. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Do I have real evidence? Or is it just an old belief? When you start asking like that, you will realize many things you once believed are not as certain as you thought. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can continue living by the old belief, or you can try a new action, something small, but different. And every time you do that, you are rewriting your beliefs, not with words, but with experience. And experience is always stronger than thought. Slowly, you will no longer be limited by what you used to believe. You will begin to create new beliefs that align with who you want to become. And when that happens, your life will begin to change. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you did. We're about to move into something very practical, very familiar, but also the place where all your fears, all your beliefs show up the most clearly. That is, your daily decisions, the small choices that create big differences. Small decisions are quietly shaping your entire life. You don't change your life in one big moment. You change it through very small decisions every single day. Most people only think life changes when something big happens, a big opportunity, a major turning point. But the truth is, those things are just the results. The real cause lies in the small choices repeated over and over again. A very real story. There were two people, starting from the same point, same age, same conditions. Nothing obviously different. But after a few years, their lives became completely different. One person moved forward, grew, had more opportunities. The other stayed the same, didn't change. What created the difference was not a big decision, but the small choices made every day. The first person spent a little time learning each day, just 30 minutes. Not much, but consistent. The second person also had that same time, but used it to scroll on their phone, watching unnecessary things. Nothing is wrong with that. It's just different. One chose growth, one chose comfort. On the first day, no difference. The first week, still the same. The first month, not obvious yet, but after 1 year, the difference starts to show. And after a few years, the gap becomes huge. That is the power of small decisions. You don't notice it right away, but it accumulates every day, a little, until it turns into a big result. There is something important. Every decision you make doesn't just create results, it also shapes who you become. When you choose to procrastinate, you're not just delaying a task, you are becoming a person who procrastinates. When you choose discipline, you're not just completing the task, you are becoming a disciplined person. Do you see it? You're not just living, you are building yourself through every choice, every action. And the thing is, small decisions are often underestimated because they don't feel important. Skipping today is fine. I'll do it tomorrow. This won't matter anyway. But those "it's fine" moments are accumulating silently, and over time, they create a version of you that you never consciously chose. Another thing, small decisions are often made based on emotions. You feel tired, you don't want to do it. You feel bored, you want to quit. You lack motivation, you want to delay, and you follow that feeling. It's not wrong. But if you always do that, your emotions will control your life. And emotions change constantly. You cannot build a stable life based on something that always changes. That's why people who grow don't always feel motivated, but they still act, because they don't rely on emotions. They rely on decisions. They decide in advance. No matter how they feel, they still take action. It sounds hard, but actually, you don't need to change everything. You just need to choose a few small decisions and stick to them. For example, every day, study for 20 minutes. Every day, read a few pages of a book. Every day, do one thing you've been procrastinating on. You don't need much. You just need consistency. Because consistent is more important than a lot. A big mistake is trying to change too many things at once. You want to become perfect. You set too many goals. Then you can't maintain them. And you quit. Not because you can't, but because you overwhelmed yourself. Simplify it. One small change, but sustained over time, is more powerful than a big change that only lasts a few days. There's a question you can ask yourself every day. Today, Am I becoming better or worse? You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be a little better. And if one day you fail, it's okay. What matters is you come back. You don't quit. Because the most important thing is not how many times you fail, but how many times you return. You can slip, but don't stay down. You can be slow, but don't stop. Life doesn't require you to be perfect. It only asks you to keep going. And when you hold on to that, small decisions will begin to change your life. Not loudly, but truly and steadily. And one day, you will look back and realize you've come much further from very small things that you once thought didn't matter. And that is how you take back control of your life. The environment you live in is silently shaping who you become. You may think you are the one making decisions. You are the one controlling your life. But there is a truth few people realize. You are not only influenced by your thoughts, you are also influenced by your environment in a very subtle way. You don't notice it, but it's always there, every single day. A very simple example. If you stay in a room where everyone procrastinates, everyone complains, everyone chooses safety, then no matter how motivated you are, you will slowly be pulled down. Not immediately, but gradually. You begin to feel that procrastination is normal. You begin to feel that it's okay not to try. You begin to think, maybe everyone is like this, and just like that, you change, not because you want to, but because you adapt. On the other hand, if you are in an environment where people are constantly growing, constantly learning, constantly taking action, you will feel that you need to change too. No one forces you, but you don't want to stay still. You see, environment doesn't need to say anything, but it still influences you very strongly. There is something important. Environment is not just people. It is everything you are exposed to. The videos you watch, the content you read, the things you listen to every day. All of it is shaping your thinking. If every day you consume negative things, drama, criticism, comparison, you will start to see the world that way. You will feel everything is difficult. People are untrustworthy. Life is full of pressure, and you will act accordingly. But if you are exposed to more positive things, content that helps you grow, inspiring stories, deeper perspectives, you will begin to think differently, see differently, and act differently. You see, you don't need to change yourself immediately. You just need to change your environment, because your environment will change you. One more thing. Many people think, I'm strong enough not to be influenced. But the truth is, no one is completely immune. You may resist for a while, but if you stay in that environment long enough, you will be affected. That's not weakness. That's human nature. We adapt. We blend in. And that's why you need to choose your environment consciously, not randomly, not by default, but by choice. You can't control everything, but you can reduce negative influences and increase positive ones. A very simple example. If you know certain content makes you procrastinate, limit it. You don't have to cut it off completely. Just reduce it. If you know Certain people always bring you down. Keep some distance. You don't have to cut them off. Just reduce the exposure. And instead, find better sources. A book, a valuable video, a person with a positive mindset. Small things, but enough to change your direction. A question worth thinking about. If I continue living in my current environment, in 5 years, who will I become? The answer might surprise you, because you will see. You don't need to predict far ahead. Just look at the people around you, the ones you spend the most time with. You are slowly becoming like them. Not completely, but little by little. The way they think, the way they react, the way they live is affecting you. And this can be an opportunity or a risk. Depending on whether you are aware of it or not, you don't need a perfect environment. You just need a slightly better one than your current. And gradually, you upgrade it. Just like you're upgrading yourself, step by step, no rush, but with direction. Because in the end, you don't just live in your environment. You become a product of it. And when you understand this, you will stop letting things happen randomly. You will start choosing what you listen to, choosing what you watch, choosing what you keep. And when you change your environment, you will realize things start to feel easier, not because life becomes easier, but because you are in the right place to grow. Discipline is not forcing yourself. It is building a different version of you. You might think, to change, you need more motivation. You need inspiration. You need energy. You need a push. But if you look back, how many times have you felt motivated, and then it disappeared? You started strong, then slowly you slowed down, and then you stopped. Not because you didn't want to, but because motivation is not stable. It comes, then it goes. It depends on emotions, and emotions are always changing. That's why, if you only rely on motivation, you will always restart, again and again. So what keeps you going, even when you don't feel like it? That is discipline. But discipline is not forcing yourself, not enduring, not punishing yourself. True discipline is when you don't need to think too much, you still do it. You don't need emotions, you still continue, like brushing your teeth every day. You don't need motivation, you don't need inspiration. You just do it, because it has become a part of you. That's the key. Discipline is not an action, it is an identity. You don't try to work hard. You become a hard-working person. You don't try to be disciplined. You become a disciplined person. And when that happens, you don't need to force yourself anymore. You simply live according to who you are. A very clear example. If you believe, I am a procrastinator, you will procrastinate, even when you don't want to, because that's how you see yourself. But if you start to believe, I am a person who takes action, you will feel uncomfortable. When you don't act, you will want to return to action, because that is your new identity. You see, it's not actions that create identity. It's identity that creates actions. But how do you change your identity? Not by saying, but by repeated actions. Every time you do something small, you are sending a signal to yourself. This is who I am. You read a little. I am a learner. You keep a promise to yourself. I am reliable. You work even without motivation. I am disciplined. At first, These signals are small, but when repeated enough, they become beliefs, and beliefs become identity. A very common mistake is trying to change everything at once. You want to become a completely different person. In a short time, you set too many expectations. Then you can't keep up, and you fall back to where you started. Not because you can't, but because you went too fast. Real change always starts small, very small, but intentional. You don't need to become perfect. You just need to be a little better than yesterday, every day. And the most important thing is consistency. It's not about how much you do, but how long you can keep going. One small action, repeated for 100 days, will be more powerful than one big action, done for only 3 days. Because it creates a new person. There is a moment, very important, that you need to pay attention to. It's when you don't feel like doing it. That's when real discipline shows up. Not when you have motivation, but when you don't, and you still do it. Every time you do that, you are upgrading yourself. You are proving, I'm not dependent on my emotions. I can control my actions. And little by little, you become stronger, not on the outside, but on the inside. One more thing. You don't have to do everything alone. You can design systems to help you stay disciplined. For example, set fixed times. Create an environment with fewer distractions. Prepare what you need in advance. Reduce friction as much as possible. Because discipline is not about constant struggle, but about making the right thing easier and the wrong thing harder. You don't need stronger willpower. You need a better system. And when you combine small actions, repetition, and the right environment, you won't have to try as hard as before. You will, naturally, become the person you want to be. And when that happens, your life will change. Not because of one big decision, but because you have become a different person. A person who is no longer controlled by emotions, no longer dragged down by procrastination, no longer stops halfway, but instead keeps going, no matter what. What you're really afraid of is not failure, but becoming small. You think you're afraid of failure, but maybe what you fear more is becoming small. Afraid of living an ordinary life. Afraid of looking back and realizing you didn't do your best. Afraid of knowing you could have done more, but didn't. This fear isn't loud, not obvious. It doesn't make you panic, but it quietly appears. On nights when you lie alone, when you ask yourself, am I on the right path? When will I truly start? When will I live up to my potential? There is one truth. No one regrets giving their all. People only regret not having the courage, not daring to try, not daring to step out, not daring to believe in themselves. There was a man who lived a stable life, an ordinary job, enough income to get by. Nothing too bad, but nothing remarkable either. Every day felt the same. He once had dreams, had idea, wanted to try something different, but he always said, I'll do it later. Next year, when things are more stable. Year after year, nothing changed, until one day, he realized what hurt him the most was not the times he failed, but the times he didn't try. the opportunities he let slip away, the decisions he didn't dare to make, and he realized he wasn't afraid of failure. He was afraid of the feeling of knowing he could be more, but didn't act. Have you ever felt that way? That feeling of being stuck, not because you lack ability, but because you haven't truly dared to move forward. There's a paradox. Many people don't take action because they fear failure, but when they don't act, they end up living in a prolonged failure, a failure that isn't loud, but deep, because it hits your self-respect. You start to doubt yourself. Why didn't I do it? What am I waiting for? And every time you procrastinate, you lose a little bit of trust in yourself. No one sees it, but you know, and it accumulates. Gradually, you get used to living smaller, not because you're weak, but because you've gotten used to not stepping out. But there is a powerful truth. You were not born to shrink yourself. You were not born just to exist. You were born to grow, to try, to learn, to fail, to evolve. If you look back, the moments you felt most proud were not when you were safe, but when you dared to speak, dared to try, dared to step outside your comfort zone. Whether you succeeded or not, you still felt alive. But on the days you chose too much safety, chose silence, chose inaction, how did you feel? Empty, not because life was bad, but because you knew you didn't live fully. There's a question, very important. If you keep living the way you are now, 5 years from today, will you feel proud or regret? The answer might make you think, because deep down, you know you can be more. But to step up, you have to accept one thing. You won't be perfect. You will make mistakes. You will be judged. You will have uncertain days, but that's the price of living bigger, and the choice is yours. Live safe, but smaller, or live boldly, even with uncertainty. No one can decide for you. Not circumstances, not your past, not other people. Only you. Because in the end, what you're truly afraid of is not failure, but one day looking back and realizing you live below your potential. And when that moment comes, there's no one left to blame, only you. And the question, why didn't I start sooner? There is still time, but not forever. And the small decision you make today could be the line between an ordinary life and a life you are truly proud of. You don't have as much time as you think you always think. You still have time that you can start later, after things are more stable, after you feel more confident, after you feel more ready. But there's a truth. You will never feel completely ready. There will always be a reason to delay and always a new fear, always something not perfect yet. And if you keep waiting, you will wait forever. Time does not stand still. It does not wait for you. Every day that passes, you are trading a part of your life for procrastination, for hesitation, for fear. You don't realize it. But day by day, opportunities are slipping away. Your energy is slowly fading. Your courage is not the same as before. And then one day, you will realize you no longer have as many choices as before. Not because you are not capable, but because you didn't start when you still could. There's something people rarely tell you. You do not have unlimited time. You only have a limited number of opportunities, a limited amount of energy, a limited number of moments, and every time you say, tomorrow, you are spending a part of it. Have you ever thought, if today were the last day you still had a chance, what would you do differently? Would you still delay, or would you act? The truth is, most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they wait too long. Wait until the opportunity is gone. Wait until the motivation is gone. Wait until they no longer believe in themselves. And the most painful part is not failure, but realizing you could have done it differently, but you didn't. You are standing at a very important point, not in the future, but right now. This moment is where everything can change, not tomorrow, not next week, but today. You don't need a perfect step. You just need a real one. A small action, but clear. A decision, but firm. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take the first step. Because every great journey starts that way. The people you admire. It's not that they don't feel fear. It's not that they don't doubt. It's not that they don't fail. They just have one difference. They don't let fear decide for them. They act, even when they're uncertain. And that action creates confidence, not the other way around. You're waiting for confidence to begin, but the truth is, you have to begin to gain confidence. That is the loop you must break. Right now, no one is coming to save you. There is no perfect moment, no clear signal from the universe. Only you and your choice. You can keep going as you are, safe, but slowly regretful. Or you can start, even if it's small, even if you're uncertain, even if you're still afraid, but real. Because in the end, this life is not about how many risks you avoided, but how much of your potential you lived, how much you dared, how much you tried, how real you lived. One day, you will look back and you will see either a life full of excuses or a life full of courageous choices, and that is decided by what you do today, not tomorrow, not someday, but right now, because you don't have as much time as you think. And the final question is, will you keep waiting, or will you begin?